So I think that meditation needs to be combined with catharsis and with analysis, especially for the Western man. That is, we do catharsis in order to free up the emotions so that the mind is emptier for meditation, and we do analysis so as to understand these mechanisms of the mind. But the main way, but you cannot really deal with a vritti, that is, with these seeds, that is the slight pressure or the samskaras, with analysis, because there are no thoughts on this level. So you have to deal with this either by meditation, by disengaging yourself from it and focusing on God, focusing on light, on Christ, anything that's suitable to you, or by catharsis, allowing it to come to the surface. There's like a small bubble in the center of our being, and we allow this bubble to expand, 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 and then just release itself in some way through our energy body, through our mind. So this is the way we can deal with it when it is in this very subtle state. Now when it becomes a vasana, a strong impulse, a strong desire, or a strong feeling in our minds, then one way to deal with it here is to develop what is called discrimination. Vairagya, that is, discrimination between what is useful for our spiritual evolution and what is not useful. Spiritual discrimination has nothing to do with discrimination as we know it, discriminating against people. It's not a discrimination against anything. It's just an awareness of what serves the purpose of my existence. So we pass the particular impulse through various screens. One screen is, will this harm anybody? This impulse that I have, what I want to do or express, will it harm anyone? Will it harm me? Will it harm my body? Will it harm my mind? Will it help my spiritual growth process? Or will it keep me back? Will it offer anything to the world? The impulse that I feel now, that if I follow this impulse, will it offer anything? And thirdly, seventhly, if it's something which we have done many times, we might ask this question: how many times have I done this? Has it brought me happiness? Especially if it's something which we consider is detrimental to our health or to our happiness. How many times have I followed this impulse, and what has the result been in my life every time I have followed this impulse, whether it be anger or fear or desire or anything else in our lives? So the first power that we need to develop in order to free ourselves from these impulses when they get to the level of strong impulses is discrimination, and to think about what we are desiring to do and what effect that will have on our lives and on the lives of people around us. Secondly, we need tapas. We need the ability to control ourselves in such situations. Now, there's a difference between control and suppression. Suppression is the feeling that I must not do something out of fear. I don't want to do this because I will be rejected, or I'm suppressing myself. I might lose someone's love. This is suppression. Whereas control is a conscious awareness that I consciously choose. I am not being suppressed by anyone. I am consciously choosing that in my evaluation, this feeling that I have or this desire that I have is not in my benefit to act upon at this time in my life. So it has nothing to do with being suppressed. I'm not doing it for anyone else. I'm not doing it out of fear of rejection or fear of anything. I'm doing it because I consciously see the wisdom of not acting on this impulse. If the impulse then becomes a klesha, becomes a total identification, what can we do at this level? Now I'm totally identified. My thought processes are being totally controlled by this feeling, this thought, this belief. I become anger, I become fear, I am in rage, I am in panic, or anything else. We're talking about negative impulses now, because the positive ones we don't care about changing. Let's just enjoy the love that we feel, the happiness, the peace that we feel. We're talking about what makes us unhappy and makes people around us unhappy. So we've become totally identified now. What choices do we have now? First of all, we have the technique that we learned some weeks ago, and that is the involution of the emotion. So I have an emotion or a desire or a need which is based on what? It's based on an attachment or an aversion. And that attachment or aversion is based on an identification. I believe that I am this. I believe I am a man or a woman, a teacher or a father or a mother or an artist or a businesswoman or a person. And so my attachment with this role is creating for me an attachment or an aversion which creates in me this emotion or this desire. So I say, what am I attached to here? What is the belief which is making me attached to this now? Why do I feel I cannot be happy without this? What role am I attached to? What am I investing here? And then I say, I am not this. I am not this role. I am an immortal soul in the process of evolution. So it's a semi-psychological, semi-spiritual technique. Because on the one hand, it starts out with psychological analysis, but it ends up in the affirmation of my spiritual self. So we start out by saying, what is my attachment? What is my belief? What is my desire? And we end up saying, but I am not this. Now, we already mentioned that it also at the state of the tendency, that is the identification with the tendencies, the kleshas, Patanjali also suggests to us that in this case also we can free ourselves with tapas. That is, not only tapas of not acting at that moment, but the regular employment of tapas, that is the regular employment of various disciplines, allows us to develop willpower and discrimination. For example, today or yesterday started the 40 days of fasting for the Greek Orthodox Christians. And so most people, or some people anyway, it's less and less every year I guess, will not be eating any kind of dairy products, any kind of meat, any oil. And so this becomes a discipline for 40 days. And all religions have this, whether it's the Ramadan of the Muslims, or the Ekdashi of the Hindus, or even the American Indians, all have their fasting periods. So when I'm fasting, the impulse, the tendency of the samskara to eat and to satisfy energy needs and to satisfy taste needs comes up. And it becomes a vritti, and it becomes a vasana, and identify with it. Now I have a choice. I can reach for what I have decided not to eat, or I cannot reach. And this is tapas, this is discipline. And when I develop this ability by performing, let's say once a year for a month or 40 days, depending on the religion that I belong to, this kind of a discipline, then I start to have this kind of awareness, the awareness of myself as separate from the desire impulse which comes up. How many times in the day does the desire impulse to eat what I have chosen not to eat for this period of time, or in the case of the Muslims, not to eat until the sun goes down, how many times does the desire come up? It comes up very frequently. And each time I don't act on the desire, I strengthen my willpower. and I weaken this desire, and I separate myself from my desire nature. So Patanjali suggests discipline as a means of freeing ourselves from these desire impulses. He also suggests self-study, that is, the studying of the self, which means the self with a large S and the self with a small s. That is, studying the personality on one level to understand the mechanisms and be aware of the mechanisms of the personality. On the other hand, study the nature of our real self, basically through books, through meditation, and hopefully eventually through direct experience, so that I realize that I am this greater self and I am not this other small self which has been programmed to be attached to various forms of pleasure, satisfaction, or desire in life. And that gives me a freedom to act on those impulses which I consider useful and not act on those impulses which I consider detrimental, either to my health or to my harmonious relationships or to my ultimate purpose in life. And a third technique or way that Patanjali suggests is devotion to God. It is by devoting our love and our worship and our energy toward a divine being, we gain from that relationship strength and clarity. And because all of these divine beings in history have taught love, have taught discipline, have taught forgiveness, have taught purity, and when I love someone, when I worship a divine being, then my need is also to follow their guidelines. Then that gives me the strength, that love and that desire to follow those guidelines gives me the strength to separate myself from my desire nature. But there's another way also to deal with this, especially when it gets to the level of action. And this is the whole meaning of a very wonderful book called the Bhagavad Gita. And that is, if I am not able to control my mind, and if I'm not able to control my desire nature, at least at every moment let me offer my actions, because I never know if my actions are going to be totally aligned with my highest and purest nature. It would be very unlikely since I'm not enlightened. So it's to offer the fruit of my actions to God. So whatever I do, I offer you the result of this effort. So we offer the result of our actions. Now we don't give up acting. This is called in Sanskrit nishkama karma. Nish means without. Kama means desire, as in Kama Sutra. And karma means action. So it's action without desire. So I act, I do what I think is best in life. I serve, I try to create, I try to care for my family, I try to do whatever I am guided to do in life. But I offer the results of those actions to the divine. That is, I realize that the results will be what is best. It's a kind of faith, actually. One way to see it is to offer, and the other way is to surrender the results. And another way to see it is just having faith that the results will be those which are best for the evolutionary process. Because even action done with desire to help and with an attachment to the result of that effort creates what the yogis call a karma. It may be a pleasant karma, but it still is a karma.